This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth, and if you guys thought 2020 was bad, well, I hate to say it, but buckle up, folks, because according to the documents we're going to reveal in this video, things are about to get a lot worse in the spring of 2021, in Canada in particular. This is an order from the Canadian government for riot control agents, published on September 15th, 2020 by the Department of National Defense, who has the requirement for the items detailed below. Riot control agents, specifically chemical agents or tear gas, in the amount of 36,000 units, to be delivered to the Canadian Forces Ammunition Depot in Dundurn, Saskatchewan, by the 31st of March 2021. Meanwhile, we have this, submitted the very following day on September 16th, 2020, a request for information regarding service providers for federal quarantine isolation sites for the Government of Canada. So what are they planning here for the spring of 2021, and why did the Canadian Forces Information Operations Pandemic Campaign have to be squashed after details were revealed to their top general? We're going to talk about all of this, but most importantly, what type of solutions can we implement here to deal with all of this? But just before we do, I want to remind you guys that I am currently under heavy attack for what I do here at Press for Truth. They're censoring me heavily, and they're attacking me financially. So if you appreciate my efforts to bring you this information, please check the links in the description below to find out how you can make a donation today. Alright folks, it looks like the Canadian government is preparing for something big in the spring of 2021 by ordering 36,000 units of tear gas and by trying to secure new locations for isolation camps. According to the documents, under the current emergency order in council, all travelers arriving in Canada must have a suitable place to isolate or quarantine. Public Health Agency Canada, or PHAC, is currently managing 11 designated quarantine sites, or DQS, in 9 cities across Canada, with capacity to lodge up to 1,600 travelers. PHAC regional staff are responsible for the management of 9 quarantine sites across Canada, with logistics, cleaning, transportation, food, and nursing services provided by external providers. At this time, the DQS are being used to address the COVID-19 14-day quarantine requirements for international travelers not having a suitable place to isolate. Over time, the use of the DQS may be temporarily discontinued until needed again by the Government of Canada, or may be used for other requirements. In anticipation of a possible continued need for quarantine sites over the next 1 to 2 years, given the COVID-19 pandemic, PHAC is considering having a third-party service provider provide and manage the existing sites and all of the related services on its behalf. PHAC may also consider expanding its site footprint to other locations, provided an Annex C attached. So here they say it's meant for travelers, but isn't that what the Quarantine Act was already for? In my video dated March 17th, titled "New Emergency Measures Will Come from the Quarantine Act, This is Not Looking Good for Canada," I showed how the act is intended for travelers, but soon will be expanded to regular Canadian citizens. Just 2 weeks ago, while in downtown Vancouver, I came across what I was told was a vehicle maintenance exercise where they were simply testing out their vehicles by driving them around the block of their Vancouver base. But that had nothing to do with conditioning the public to accept it as normal. The military wouldn't try to manipulate people like that, would they? Oh, they most certainly would. Canadian Forces Information Operations Pandemic Campaign squashed after details revealed to top general. The Canadian Forces planned what some military insiders described as a propaganda campaign aimed at heading off civil disobedience by the public during the coronavirus pandemic. But the initiative was shut down by the country's top soldier, who questioned whether it went too far in the methods military officers wanted to use. The campaign called for shaping and exploiting information, allowing the Canadian Forces to be able to strengthen trust in official sources of information, said a military planning document reviewed by this newspaper. One of the desired results was that civil order be maintained during the pandemic. Canadian public is deterred from participating in civil disobedience according to the objectives of the plan. Canadian public compliance with suppression measures is reinforced. When Chief of Defence Staff General John Vance was briefed about the information operations campaign, he ordered it stopped. Some senior military staff raised concerns the plan could be open to abuse in using propaganda or deception to manipulate the Canadian public. And the article goes on here to say, the campaign was a combination of traditional communications methods using public affairs staff and influence activity specialists, as well as various other techniques to get military and government messages across to the public. If necessary, military vehicles with loudspeakers would be used to transmit such information. It then goes on here to say, folks are generally nervous about the idea of information operations, he added. They were concerned the term information operations gets people thinking about propaganda or influencing people with deception. Information operations is defined by the Canadian Forces as actions taken in support of political and military objectives which influence decision makers by affecting others' information while exploiting and protecting one's own information. Asked about whether the military expected Canadians to participate in civil disobedience or riots during the pandemic, Santapera responded, "That was our worst case scenario." He explains, "Our worst case scenario for COVID was that the first wave would be so much worse and that some of the 24,000 people we had would have to be called out in aid to civil power," Santapera explained. "The Canadian Forces can be called out by the government for service in aid of civil power in any case in which a riot or disturbance of the peace is beyond the powers of the civil authorities to suppress, prevent, or deal with." The military's information operations campaign noted physical distancing and self-isolation had resulted in Canadians perceiving a loss of freedom. This disempowerment and general context of anxiety will lead to increases of irrational behavior, which may run counter to the overall response effort and public well-being, it added. It then goes on to say this. Santapera said the Canadian Forces was also concerned misinformation would circulate during the pandemic, and the Information Operations Campaign was needed to counter that. The Information's Operations document acknowledged there had been no confirmed attempts by foreign powers to disrupt the Canadian government's response to the pandemic, but warned some disinformation could be circulated. Military officers privately say, however, that disinformation on the pandemic ultimately didn't become a major issue in Canada. Much of the misinformation circulated in North America came from sources like US President Donald Trump. CNN reported that Trump made 215 false claims about the pandemic over a 14-week period. Officers also point out that countering misinformation about the pandemic is not a job of the Canadian military, but one for various health authorities. Santapera acknowledged that, but noted the military could be used to support such efforts. And what type of misinformation are they talking about? Well, take a look at this tweet from the president just this morning. When you click on it, it says, "This tweet violated the Twitter rules about spreading misleading and potentially harmful information related to COVID-19. However, Twitter has determined that it may be in the public's interest for the tweet to remain accessible." So what did he say? Well, flu season is coming up. Many people every year, sometimes over 100,000, and despite the vaccine, die from the flu. Are we going to close down the country? No, we have learned to live with it. Just like we are learning to live with COVID. In most populations, far less lethal. There is absolutely nothing untrue about that statement. But the major tech conglomerates have appointed themselves as the gatekeepers of political thought and opinion, and now they are teaming up with the military-industrial complex for a war against you and me. So what can you do about it? Well, step one, turn your TV off and stop letting the propaganda enter your mind. Step two is to resist tyranny at every incremental step with non-compliance and civil disobedience. Mandatory masks, you say? Thanks, but no thanks. I'll take my business elsewhere. No vaccine, no entry? No problem. There are other options. And the one thing the government fears the most is that you'll make yourself self-sustainable. Get off the grid, learn to grow your own food, cooperate with like-minded individuals in your community, and have nothing to do with the government or the banks. So I think non-compliance is the key moving forward, if you want to, of course. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Guys, it's crunch time. They're gearing up for a major clampdown here, so please spread this information. I need all the help I can get with that. So please click that thumbs up button and share this one with your friends and your family. Don't forget to check out pressfortruth.ca/donate to contribute to my efforts moving forward. Thank you so much to anybody who does contribute. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. Stay tuned. We're going to have more video reports coming soon. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth. We all want truth. The truth will set you free.